Our roofing clients did over $5 million last month in top-line revenue just through meta advertising. Here's our last month's marketing report just so you can see. Now, there's a specific series of ads that they use to be able to do that, and it's probably not what you think. It's not because they were getting like the highest quality leads or the most amount of leads, like the highest volume or the largest jobs, like $50,000 jobs. It really had nothing to do with that. There's actually way more that goes into it. And in this video, I'll be breaking down the 5 top ads and why they worked that we used last month that were able to produce these kind of numbers. And you'll see there's actually one of these top 5 ads that a lot of roofers think they should run, but it really only works for one specific type of company. So I'll be breaking that down as we go through this. Now, you're probably wondering, why should you even listen to me in the first place? Well, just to give you some context, I'm Ali. I'm the co-founder, head of sales at Contractor Liberty. So we work with over 50 roofing and home service businesses across the US. So that means that I see the entire funnel. So the ads, the qualification, the appointment booking, the closing, the entire numbers, and ultimately, the return on investment. We see that whole process. And through seeing all those numbers, what we've seen is that unlike what a lot of roofers think, it's really not about the individual ad that they run. It's really about how that fits into their current company. So again, it's not going to be about the quality, the volume, or the size of the jobs that they're getting. It's actually about what works best for your sales team, for your whole process, where you already have established what's going to fit best with that strategy. So like I said in this video, I'll break down the 5 different ads that worked best, 5 different strategies, and ultimately 5 different companies, because these are going to be completely different strategies that could work for a one-man show, whereas for a 20-man sales team, it's not going to work the same way. So I'll be breaking down the different ones and how that can work for your company specifically. The fundamental thing to understand as I walk through these ads and I show you the different ways that we structure it for all our clients is the ads that we run for each individual client are really going to vary depending on their strong suits, what they're specifically looking for on kind of the dial is what we call it, the dial between quality and volume. So larger companies that have a 20 or 30-man sales team that are super aggressive, super cutthroat, those guys a lot of times want a lot of volume. Whereas maybe a one-man show wants a lot of quality. So when we work with a client, we identify exactly where they're at on that and what they're specifically looking for. And those are the kind of ads that we're going to run for them. So for this first ad, the number 1 ad, by the way, this ad, I think spent over $7,000 last month, just this individual picture and this text. And I think the return on ad spend on this one was over like 16x. So this was a really strong ad. And what we did with this ad specifically, this is for John Beal Roofing. You guys might have heard of John Beal Roofing. I'm pretty sure the largest residential roofer in Missouri. They're one of our clients. They have a very strong brand in St. Louis, which is their main market. They have a very strong brand. They look for specifically larger homes, 30, 40 squares as they focus. So they want the quality, but at the same time, they have a 30-man sales team. They're very aggressive. So they're fine going in and almost treating it as like a door knock and just being very aggressive on that sale to get the deal. They're one-call closers. They're not going to wait around and follow up, for 2 weeks. So we took that into consideration when we were working with these guys. We know they have a strong brand and that's what they're looking for. So that's what we put emphasis on in this ad specifically. If we look at this grid which we were running for them, you can see that in all 3 parts of this grid, we're talking about the brand, we're showing yard signs, we're showing homeowners, and we're using what we call homeowner affinity. So these homeowners right here, you can see behind them is their home. These are large homes. These are going to be like 30, 40 square projects. We do that intentionally because when you're seeing an ad where there's someone who's like you, you're going to feel affinity. You're going to kind of reciprocate with that ad. You're going to identify with it. So you're going to click on it. So the people that are going to click on these type of ads are people who have homes like this, who are in like a white picket fence neighborhood, because that's what this client wanted. So that's how we structure the ads. And we used a very clever way of targeting people in that area who are local by using a local sports team. So you can see at the bottom left, they're holding up a kind of like a flag with the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis Blues are a hockey team in St. Louis. It's a local team. You don't only know that if you're over there. So we specifically use that because that was in one of their pictures. That shows the homeowners there that they're local, they're quality, they're in the area, they have a strong brand. And that's exactly the kind of leads that we want because the people coming in are bought in on the company. They know what they're about. They're high quality. They've got the large homes because that's what they identify with on the ad. So we get a much higher quality type of lead, a much higher intent. But also, like I said, they have a large sales team that is very aggressive. And so we do want to still optimize for volume. So for these guys specifically in the offer, if we look at the text that we were running for them, we weren't running like clickbaity price ads like you might have seen, like the starting at $5,000 or something. But we are being straight up that, we're cheaper than other roofers, for example. Like other roofers are going to try to overcharge you for 25 grand. We can install it for like 15 grand. So we're still being somewhat aggressive because we know that their sales team can handle that type of sale. So that's what this first ad looked like. And again, this is the type of ad that will run for a large company that has a strong brand, a strong sales team, and wants specifically larger homes, which almost every roofer does. But, this is a team that can actually handle it. So that's what that looked like for this first client. Now, this second client that I'm going to show you, and that's why it's so important to really look at your individual client. This second client really wanted to focus on insurance. So that's exactly what we did for them. What we did, it's a video ad. So if I just pause it right here, this is basically the owner of the company talking about hail damage, talking about what goes on a roof, their process specifically for their company. And so this type of ad is what we're going to run for a client who is much more, it's a much smaller company. It's like a mid-sized company. I think they're doing like 2 or 3 million. So they're not looking for like 1 million leads a month, right? They want to handpick, amount of high quality lead people that they can actually have real conversations with. And ultimately people that are educated on the insurance process. That was the biggest thing for them. They wanted to speak to people who kind of knew what was going on. They were already warmed up. And so that's what this ad does. So we looked at their sales team. We looked at, they only had like 2 or 3 closers, and that's exactly what we matched in the ad. We're not saying get a roof for like $4,000 or anything like that. We're really putting emphasis on the insurance process. The fact that, a roof doesn't have to feel expensive if you're doing it through the insurance process, blah, blah, blah. And so by doing this, we're getting the homeowner bought in on that company's specific process, what they do differently, the quality, and ultimately all the good things about a roofing company, right? You're not really in a price competition. We're dealing with someone who wants the best company here. So that's the kind of ad that will run for an insurance heavy business, someone who doesn't want a ton of leads on the dial. They're more towards the quality than they are for the volume. Now, the third ad that we managed that did very well last month, which I think it spent over $5,000. So this is a very proven ad just last month. This was an ad for a much smaller company, and I'll explain exactly why we set it up this way for this small company. As you can see, this ad right here is much more focused on kind of the local angles. This is a roofer who's in Northern California. So what we do for all our clients is we're very intentional with the specific creatives that we use. This is a type of home that you would see in Northern California. These are specifically Northern Californian trees. You wouldn't see this type of home in like Texas, for example, or in Florida, right? So we're very intentional with how we do that. This is our client right here with people that are from Northern California. Obviously, there's a lot of Asians in Northern California, so we did this intentionally. Now, this company right here, they're a much smaller company. It's basically a one-man show. I'm pretty sure there's 2 guys over there. There's 1 sales guy and 1 operations guy. So we're not going for a super aggressive volume approach. We're really focusing on quality. Our cost per lead might be higher here, but we're going for high quality people who are going to close more. So in our text that we use to convert people, you can see it's already much longer, which is intentional. But we don't talk about the fact that we have the craziest price, guarantees, financing, whatever it is. We're basically running the homeowners through a story. So the whole story with this, the whole premise is that, Bay Area homeowners are losing thousands on their roof by picking the wrong contractors. We're putting a contrast. What we're doing, there's super big roofers who are going to try to overcharge you, charge you $25,000 for like a normal roof. And there's guys who are going to come in $5,000 less and try to undercut you and basically, kind of mess up the whole project. And we're kind of like the middle ones who actually do good work, are family owned, quality, blah, blah, blah. So we're showing the homeowners that, we're not going to be the cheapest, but we're also not going to be the most expensive. We're going to be the quality company. So we've seen this works really well for smaller companies who want to have that local family-owned approach with their homeowners. Again, save thousands on your roof. We're not saying you'll get your roof for a crazy amount. We're just saying you'll save money because you're going with a proper company. This is the type of ad that will run for a company of that size. I wouldn't recommend this if you're a large company, like for example, this first one right here, this John Beale Roofing right here. This is a massive company. Okay, they have overhead. That at the end of the day, their roofs are probably going to be more. They're going to be way more expensive than the typical company in that area. So we can do offers, but we have to be careful to not, say something that we can actually deliver on. So I would only recommend this for like small to mid-sized companies who can actually back that family-owned, small company approach. So that's what worked really well for that type of company. Now, this fourth ad that we ran also did great numbers. And the special thing with this one is it's what we call an evergreen ad. So an evergreen ad is an ad that we can run in the winter, in the summer, pretty much whenever, and for very extended periods of time without it seeing fatigue. With a typical ad, after a couple of months, it gets fatigued. You can't really run it anymore. Most people have seen it. This one has been consistently printing for months. And so I'll be breaking down why it's doing that. So this ad, as you can see right here, this isn't a roofer, right? This isn't someone on a roof. This is actually a homeowner testimonial. The homeowner testimonials, we really value those. A lot of roofers don't have them. They just have like Google reviews. If you have an actual testimonial of a homeowner talking about their experience with you, giving detail about what a homeowner wants to hear, that's basically the strongest form of proof, obviously of proof of work, and of actually attracting the right people. Because as I said earlier with this first ad, for example, where there's affinity, where the homeowners see people like them, so they click on it, it's kind of the same thing here where you want to have a testimonial with your ideal type of client. Because if you're doing a testimonial with a client who looks like your ideal customer, this is like a middle-aged woman in her car, I guess you could have made it a Porsche if you wanted it to be like your ideal customer, but this still works. This is typically going to be, your average job, right? It's just a middle-aged woman, looks normal. It's clearly not someone who lives in a mobile home or anything like that. So that's what you want to do. If that's the kind of person that you want to attract in your ads, that's what you want to do. And obviously this one isn't perfect, but like what we have some of our clients do sometimes is preferably the testimonial have it be in front of that customer's house, and it's a big house. That's another way of showing the right people your ads, because the people who have large homes and who kind of, identify with, the problems that that person was facing and the solutions and everything like that, those are the people that are going to convert on your ads. So this ad is doing really great. And like I said, there's nothing seasonal about this. It's just someone talking in their car. So this can work in the winter, in the summer, whenever. And it's why this ad has been printing for a long time consistently. And again, for this company specifically, they're a mid-sized company with a few reps. They don't have, a massive sales team that can handle a bunch of volume. They were really looking for something in the middle. They still have good closers, but they still wanted the quality on top of having the volume. So for them, it was a similar angle where we were trying to kind of paint the story of, we've been in the game for a long time, obviously in my 30 years as a roofer, but a bunch of people are being, overcharged or fair priced. So we're not saying that we're the cheapest guy on the block. We're saying that we're a fair priced quality company that does good work, right? That's the kind of ad that we ran for this client. And the final one, and this one is gonna, some people are gonna like it, some people are not gonna like it. This is the typical ad that a lot of roofers are gonna run. A lot of agencies are gonna run if they're not very experienced. It's a type of ad that every roofer thinks they need to run to get leads. And it's probably the number one reason why roofers don't like Facebook leads or Meta leads, is because they think that every lead is like the one that I'm about to show. But it's your classic price ad. For this client specifically, we ran you've probably seen it before, but it's a starting ad. Now, obviously, we're not doing a new roof starting at like $4,000 or $5,000 like some people do, because that's just ultra aggressive here. We did this one at $9,997, but there's a very specific reason why we did it. So before you go off thinking that, we're just another agency doing like typical copy and paste ads, this company right here, Final Trust Construction, which is the client that we're working with, they're a massive company. I think they do a couple 7 figures. I think they do actually a couple 8 figures, if I'm correct. And this company right here has a massive cutthroat sales organization. So I say an organization because it's really not just like 4 or 5 closers. It's like 20, 30 guys that are super aggressive. They have sales managers dialed in. Everyone's dialed in. We can chuck these guys any type of lead and they'll probably make something of it. And so when we started working with them and we saw that, because we always start with kind of a mid-tier option, something that's going to be a mix of quality and volume. And as we see, the sales team strengths, we kind of adapt. And in this case, we saw that they could do with pretty much anything we threw at them and still close consistently and maintain good numbers. So we were just like, all right, let's tune it up to the max. Let's optimize for volume. We're really not optimizing for quality here. We're going to do a generic ad, a starting ad that we know is going to convert. We're still changing it a little bit so it's not too baity, but that's how we did it for these guys specifically. And this is actually one of our strongest ads, if I'm correct. Pretty sure this ad, just this individual ad, converted over a couple 6 figures last month. So it's a very strong ad. And that's how we built it for this company specifically, only because they had that sales team strength. And that's the fundamental thing that I want to kind of paint in this video, is that it really all comes down to your sales team and what you can handle and not handle. This 5 million that we did for our clients last month really was not evenly distributed across the same ads. And the only reason why we ran that starting ad for that specific company at the end is because they could handle it. Because if we had a small company come to us who had like 1 sales rep and we could clearly tell they weren't very good at sales, we might want to lean more on the quality side of things. That's the main thing that I want to kind of serve as a takeaway in this video. If you're a roofer wanting to launch ads, or you already have ads and you want to optimize them, you always have to adapt your marketing strategy or your lead strategy based off of what you actually have in your sales team strengths. Because if you don't, you're either going to burn your reps or you're going to burn yourself if you're the one taking the appointments, and you're probably just going to waste a lot of money. That's the main thing to understand. Now, if you're a roofer, if you're a home service business and you think in your company that you'd want a system like this, we're actually going to customize the whole marketing strategy to your sales team and what you actually need in your company, and you want to get more appointments this way, I left a link down below. You can book a call with one of the members on my team. We'll walk you through exactly how we would build this marketing strategy specifically for your company and what you already have going on. And that's about it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.